Hi, I'm Allison from Citizens, where your voice matters. Today, my guest is Christian Sass, and we are working on some sound difficulties, so we're going to go back and forth with this, but this is the second take. Hi, Christian, how are you? I can't hear you.
I muted myself. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Thought we were having more difficulties.
No, it's not even technical. I think it's brain difficulties more than anything.
Okay, so again, this is Citizen Watch, where your voice matters, and we are doing take 2 of episode 6. So let's dive into some nice information.
Oh, we're not going to talk about Ron Paul this time around?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Later.
Because there's
Okay, so
do I bring everyone up to speed on what's happened since our first shot at this?
Yes, please do.
Oh my gosh. So I decided to do what I generally I've been known to do, which is like share information as I'm learning about it with Allison, and she's hot to trot to have me discuss that with you guys. So it's like, I think we're going to try and recap some of what we talked about on our first take of this.
Absolutely.
But you had questions, so I'm going to let you ask your original questions, and if you want, you can ask me about this silly T-shirt that I'm wearing, which I'm going to kind of hold and hug onto right now. So,
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll start with some light stuff right now.
Yeah, let's do the small talk.
Let's do the small talk first.
Like constitutional government.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so in the first take, and I know a lot of people didn't understand it because it was super choppy.
Yeah,
I
hope that's fixed now. I'm actually not even running Chrome right now, so hopefully that's
I think you're doing great.
Okay, good.
So in the first take, what we talked about was Ron Paul and his views on the government, foreign policies, and the federal income tax.
Okay.
Now, if you want to give us an overview of who Ron Paul is, and we can discuss the movie that you shared with me that I watched and discussed the federal income tax.
Okay. What's the best way to start with that? So recently you had a question for me about, you're like, somebody accused me of being a Rand Paul Republican. Is that how you recall it?
Nobody accused me of it. They asked if
okay.
They asked if I was running as a Rand Paul Republican.
And they're asking if you were going to run as one.
Yes. If I was going to run as a Rand Paul Republican. And I originally decided to, but after watching a movie the other day.
Well, you called me, I think, immediately after this question and said, what does it mean to be a Rand Paul Republican? Someone asked me if I was running as one, and I went, do you mean Ron Paul Republican? Well, yeah, what is that too? And it's like, okay, so this is a twofer. So,
very much so.
But I guess what I'm trying to figure out right now is how do you like transpose all of that knowledge that I know that I haven't even begun to scratch the surface of to tell you about what that means. And I don't think of myself as an expert. But I'll give you a little background about what I know about the Paul political family. I learned about Dr. Paul through a movie that I made you watch, and your husband watched, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes.
Called America, Freedom to Fascism. It was a movie. It was a documentary that kind of exposes and asks a question about our Federal Reserve and our monetary system as to, like, whether the legality of taxes and what is the legality of the Federal Reserve, yada yada yada. Like it starts. I think it cracks open like one question that kind of like cascades into an entire unknown world of questions that most people don't ever spend time thinking about, like what is constitutional government, and what are the limitations of our government. And I think we're all raised just thinking that America's number one, we're number one, USA, 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 and we don't question what makes that what it is. Freedom doesn't mean fireworks, shotguns, and bad draft beer. It means it's more than football and apple pie. It is the there are ideas that need to be communicated, and ultimately I believe personally as a homeschooling dad, which my wife drugged me into that world. I had no idea that I was going to become a homeschooling dad at any point in my life, but that's what I've become. But because of that, I've become a fan of critical thinking.
Right.
And I think I wouldn't call it a benefit, but as a side dish, I've become very critical of our educational system, and being a victim of public education in the 90s and the No Child Left Behind era, that didn't afford me the opportunity to really learn a lot about civics. So, am I going off track? Where am I at right now, Allison?
You're fine.
I feel like I've gone.
But with that being said,
yeah,
I'm also a victim of that. I really am.
Product of public schools.
Yes.
Thank God for the internet.
I call myself a victim of it because they pushed me through without making anything for myself.
Sure. Well, and our educational system, and I learned all of this through like connections of connections of connections in the Ron Paul ecosystem. But there's a book by a lady by the name of Charlotte Iserby, who worked, I believe, under the Reagan administration in the educational department. I'm not sure what capacity, can't recall. But she wrote a book called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. And it basically chronicles how our government got overstepped and got more involved in public education than they should be. And as a result, we have a society that doesn't know how to even argue for its rights, much less realize they have them. And that's the first step to introducing communist ideology. We take minds that are ripe for being taught, and we cram them full of, we're not teaching them to ask questions. We're teaching them to test well. And so answer the way we want you to answer, fill out the test the way you should fill out the test. And, we'll give you your diploma and you can go get a job. And we're teaching people how to be cubicle dwellers, not how to be free thinkers and entrepreneurs and, constitutional government advocates. So, but, anyway, to kind of rewind this back, I learned about Dr. Paul through this film, and I kind of came late to the party in his 2008 run. I didn't feel like I really had any opportunity to contribute. So I promised myself, I said, if this guy runs again, I'm going to do whatever it takes to help this guy get elected. And he ran in the next term in 2012. And I worked my butt off and became a delegate in the state of Illinois, which is not an easy task, I've learned. It's not something I don't think I'd repeat anytime soon. I actually think it's probably as difficult as gaining ballot access for any other thing in the state of Illinois. So it was an uphill battle. But we made it. I was one of 6 delegates for Dr. Paul, and was very anxious about hopefully repeating what happened during the Reagan administration, which was going to the Republican National Convention and utilizing parliamentary rule and Robert's Rules of Order to get our guy in office, and in a very legitimate way. And I had my political heart crushed when I saw John Boehner reading off a teleprompter on YouTube and realized that this was a scripted event and it wasn't actually an audible that was being called, and kind of swore off of all politics. But during that 7 years of 6 or 7 years of understanding who Dr. Paul was and getting very involved with the Libertarian Party, I got an education about civics, and what it takes to get office, to get ballot access, to have discussions with people, have civil discourse about ideas. And it was an amazing education. And the biggest thing that I came away with out of the entire experience was understanding the limits of our Constitution, that it was designed specifically and brilliantly. I have to just make sure that I underscore this. It's a brilliant document. It's a brilliant system that was designed to limit and restrict what government can do over sovereign people. And it's something that we risk losing if we don't teach ourselves about it. So,
Absolutely.
That's what I believe. Dr. Paul being a purist, a pure constitutional candidate, I kind of feel like somebody transported him from the founding father era. He stepped fresh out of a DeLorean and ran for office, and he was the purist. And then it was kind of defining for you that I kind of feel that Rand is, being raised as him. He's obviously emulated in many ways. Ron's a doctor, Rand is a doctor, Ron is a congressman, and Rand is a congressman, but they have two very different methodologies. Ron is a no-nonsense purist, and I think many people love and will literally stand up behind him. Would catch a bullet for him because of that. He's a man of absolutes. Where Rand, I wouldn't say he's not a man of absolutes, but he plays a much longer game, politically speaking. He plays the political game and intends to win it, and realizes that it's nothing that is won 1 year at a time. You got to be in it for enough time to create relationships and create movements. So they're very different in their application, but I think their principles are very, very similar. I think a lot of times Rand gets criticized because he didn't do something exactly the way his father did, and that's people that fell in love with Ron for his purism. His absolute, I don't bend.
Right. Well, and he really doesn't, because in this film that you had me watch, and yes, I am, but I realized that he really doesn't. He really focuses on the true capacity of the Constitution. And I think that's lost in a lot of people's eyes. So with that being said, can you kind of delve in about, and we talked about this the last episode, so I want to just kind of rehash. So, okay, apparently there's an echo.
I just fixed it
in this. Okay, great.
My audio, so I think that might have fixed it.
Okay, got it. Okay. So, as several people said, your audio are echoing, Allison. Okay, we fixed that. So that's the minor problem. Okay, let's continue. So let's talk about, one thing I mentioned in the last episode that a lot of people didn't hear because of the distortion was, what does a Ron Paul election 2012 look like in 2022?
Yeah, that's what. And I think the reason that I find that an interesting question is because it's really not about Ron Paul changing, because as I mentioned, he changes not,
Right.
The variable in that question is the electorate, the people going to the voting booth. And, I think people your age and my age, we're from a similar generation, going to learning about Dr. Paul will value him in a different way than people who will be voting for the first time in 2022 and look at the educational upbringing that they had. I mean, when you have to describe what a cassette tape is, not to make myself too old, but I don't know, if we thought it was bad during our era, it hasn't gotten better. I think a lot of what we have seen marching in the streets is a fallout from an absolutely failed educational system that hasn't taught the value of private property and hasn't taught the value. I mean, when if socialism and communism can flourish, we have failed to teach the value of personal liberties and private property.
Right. And I guess when I asked that question, is there still an echo? When I asked that question, I guess I was kind of directing more towards what, and I think you kind of answered it, but I do want a more in-depth answer, is what do you think, like, you had mentioned before 2022 first-time voters. So what do they need to know that they didn't know before to make a more educated decision about who to vote for and why?
I think part of what I was bringing up was that we may not have gotten a perfect civics education graduating around. I graduated in 1990, but I think we probably got a very large, and maybe a much more conservative view, or maybe a more how do I put this? We were definitely given a different view in that era than what is being taught now. And I feel like the only real solution is to pay attention to what is being taught, contribute to what is being taught, make content like what you're making right now with this interview series, this podcast, and that changes. The more that changes the conversation. The more that this is put out there, the more that people are given choices to think and discuss about, as opposed to just polarizing. And I almost think that, and maybe this is an idea, it's a critique. I don't think it's a critique towards you, but it's an idea in general, is we need more content that teaches people just straight up critical thinking skills outside of political influence, outside of partisan issues, like how to think critically, how to not be offended by someone who disagrees with you. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? Like what happened to debate team?
I remember that. That was great.
Yeah. So, I kind of feel like that when you ask, what does a Ron Paul style candidate, or what would a Ron Paul clone of sorts, or even himself, if he were to run again, how would he fare in the next election cycle? I don't know if it would be as good as it was in 2012, to be completely honest. I hope it would be. I think the whether or not that candidate would do well is directly related to how well we are educating upcoming voters and the current electorate today. Like, how hard are we going to fight to educate and offer a differing viewpoint, because they're getting saturated by Marxist propaganda from the media, if you want to call it the media. I mean, when you have 5 corporations with an agenda basically pumping out all media that people consume, we got to fight a little harder to teach people what they've inherited as far as freedom and freedom to freedom of expression, freedom to think and speak. Those things are eroding right before our eyes. So we have to balance the conversation. We have to put more. We have to invest more into conservative thought.
Absolutely, I completely agree. One thing that I gained a lot from that documentary. I really did. I almost want to watch it again because it was so interesting. But, it got to me, and I think it rightfully should have. And I think one of the reasons that it was able to get to me was because I am open-minded. I do listen, and I do take constructive criticism when it comes to our government. And like you said, critical thinking.
Right.
You have to put yourself there. And so now Ron Paul's views on foreign policy are really simple.
Yeah. We have no mandate to police the world. We have no mandate to empire build. War is ugly and should only be reserved for defending our own personal constitutional freedoms and our people. And when it comes to nation building, we have no mandate for that. And we are, if we're gonna have a military budget, I have nothing wrong. I'm with being hawkish, but hawkish with the purpose of protecting our own borders and our people and our way of life, our constitution, our ideas, preserving that. I mean, that's what that's for foreign. When people take an oath of office, anytime you have a police officer, a sheriff, anyone who would be taking a seat of Congress, like yourself or anyone else, would have to make an oath to defend our Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. And this isn't necessarily enemies like with guns. This is enemies who would undermine our freedoms. And the only way that we're going to do that is we have to care enough to to be passionate, to take action, to teach the next generation that this is worth knowing about. This is worth getting involved in, even at a local level. And when somebody like yourself takes that oath, it's not just part of your first day on the job and you forget about it. That is a promise that you actually understand what the contents of that document is and the value of that document, and you're willing to defend it. And so I kind of feel like we've lost that. We've become disconnected with just how valuable our rights are.
Right. And I think a lot of people have lost sight of that. It almost breaks my heart. It really does. Because I look at that documentary, I read up on Ron Paul, and, running as a Republican.
I've got a whole list for you.
I know. Running as a Republican, but having a libertarian heart, is a lot of Republicans don't understand that their views pretty much line up. Yeah. Or at least mine do, as what I thought, and I'm talking to,
when you talk with Democrats, anyone on the liberal side of the spectrum, the social side of the spectrum, a lot of those issues, to be socially liberal and fiscally conservative, usually those things tend to gravitate more towards this libertarian description. Right. And like I said, I said this on our first run, and I don't think it got recorded very well, but I remember the first time I heard the term libertarian, and I'm like, well, this can't be good. It has the word liberal in it. I didn't have any understanding of what that meant. And, it's kind of like you almost want to ask people, when was the first day you realized you were a libertarian? When you realized that, that what you cared the most about was, people's freedom and liberty. And that was the purpose, when that was the reason we have literally sent so many young men to die, was to protect that concept, that so we don't have to watch people lose their property. We don't have to watch the things that we used to look at on television, when television used to give us a view into the world that we realized we were special and exclusive from, that we didn't have those problems. And now those problems are here. And the only reason that can even happen is because we have failed to educate people on what they have. So absolutely, I think that's slowly becoming more and more my mission. It's all about education. It's about biblical education. It's about constitutional education. It's about teaching people how to think critically. The reason we have all these amazing toys around us is so that we can sit down and say, okay, what do we need to learn today? We are all Ron Paul. We are all Ron Paul. It doesn't have to stop with him. And I remember, I think it was last month, he had a stroke while live on one of his, he does a Freedom Report podcast type show. And he had this minor stroke. And I just panicked. I just lost my father to a stroke. My father-in-law, fought that and died. And, so, I've never seen it in person. So when I saw him like stop mid sentence and like, I'm like, no, not now. And and in that moment, I had to think, what does a world without him look like? I mean, we didn't talk about this last time, but I mean, that was huge in that moment. Like, do I know enough to represent these ideas to my kids and anyone else that I would encounter? Could I continue passing that torch? Can you, Allison, pass that torch? Like right now, this torch is getting lit for you.
Right.
You know? Like I think you knew you've had a torch. You're like, oh, this is what that's for, and this is where this goes. And it's not that I think your desire and direction has always been due north, but now you're realizing like who made the torch and what keeps it lit and how do you protect it from rain.
And I think that makes a very good candidate is someone like myself who, is very strong-willed.
That's what we need to elect.
Having fought cancer 3 times and winning every single time, being told I have a year and a half to live and saying, not a chance.
Right.
And graduating college at the same time. Learning about the background of what you're standing for is vital. It's key. And you can't do
it makes you fight harder too. It makes it more valuable. And the more fired up you're going to get, the more the people around you are going to get fired up.
Right.
So this is a contagious thing. I think what Dr. Paul taught us in the 8 years that he ran is that liberty's contagious.
It is. It's very contagious, especially when you realize what liberty is and what the Constitution really is. I had a friend of mine ask me the other day, she said, you believe in the Constitution, but do you really believe in the Constitution? And you have to know what that means to ask that question. And it took that documentary for me to go, wow, okay, I get it. I knew I got it, but I needed the depth of it and to understand the depth of it.
There's so much more. And the thing is this gets better. This gets more fun. That's what I'm getting at. I think we were sold a bad bill of goods when it comes to, civics is boring. The people that got to be class president learned a little bit of Robert's rules. I didn't learn what it was until I got married, had kids, and had to send those kids to 4-H. And then they're like, oh, the kids are learning Robert's Rules of Order. I'm like, yes. Because we had to learn what that was working within, the delegation. And I had never used it. Quite honestly, people need to know these things. People need to know how to engage. If you're in a homeowners association or you try to run a business and you have more than one person involved, you got to learn this. But most people, they get through life and never even bump up against it. And I think we just have to learn that it's not difficult. It's just you have a voice and it can accomplish things if you know how to engage it correctly. And these are the rules for engagement. This is how you participate. I almost caught myself. I almost said this is how you play the game, but I feel like that distorts it because it's not a game.
No, it's not. It's very real and it's very humbling, I think.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of playing a game.
Oh no.
What's your shirt about?
Oh, why would you ask me about my shirt? I didn't put it on for the show or anything. No,
So please educate us.
I think she's referring to the fact that I'm wearing a shirt that I got from a fellow patriot that cares passionately and puts everything on the line for liberty, and that is Millie Weaver out of Ohio. She is a reporter. She had worked for InfoWars for a while. Now she's independent. She put together a documentary called Shadowgate, which this is what that is. I mean, it's not really it's not well lit enough. I think I did that slightly on purpose. But it's another one of those films that, a lot of people might disregard. And I think most people who would disregard it usually already have their mind made up about how things work.
Right.
Usually it tells me everything I need to know about someone by how they react to certain things. But for the critical thinker, for liberty-loving constitutionalist, it was a fantastic film. I highly endorse people watch it and check it out. You can go to I think it's millennialmillie.com, and look for it. She makes it, actually, she's made the films completely free and downloadable. You share them, burn them, put them on DVDs, give them to friends, send this thing out. She caught a lot of flack for it a few months back because it seemed a little grandiose. It seemed a little heady, I think, to a lot of people. And, it's a deep dive.
It's a very deep dive. Deep sea fishing dive.
Oh my gosh, yes. But I think some of the things that she had talked about we're watching actually come to pass in the past couple of days, especially in regards to this election. The movie is about a whistleblower that worked within what she classifies as or is categorizing as a shadow government. So Allison knows I try to make sure I don't like dive into the pile of tinfoil in front of me and freak everyone out. But
well, we do have and the reason that I call this a special edition or a special is because there is an interview.
Yeah, that came out just recently.
Came out recently, and I think a lot of people actually haven't seen it. Some people might have.
I'm sure the mainstream doesn't want to echo anything that's in this piece of information. And the nice thing about it is that it's actually an interview with people. So their word stands as their word. It's not somebody writing down what they thought somebody said or what they overheard somebody say. So these are decorated servants of our country and our military who are making claims that it isn't the first time they put their life on the line for our Constitution, and it won't be the last.
And the reason I brought this up is because, we talk about Ron Paul and the Constitution and what he stands for and what his beliefs and where he thinks the American people should stand. And, when you talk about the American people, I want you guys to listen to this interview. This is very real. Like he said, there's decorated officers that, put their lives on the line for this. So, let's take a minute and listen to the interview.
Well, the whole thing, just so you know, it's an hour and 7 minutes. It's on worldviewweekend.com. I'm sure it's probably one of the top stories on there, but the title of it is, let me cut over to it for you, is Lieutenant General Michael Flynn's first interview since President Trump's pardon. And he has Lieutenant General McHenry with him in this interview, all on telephone. This took place on the 28th. And some of the information that they talk about, let me cut over on this as well, is pretty interesting because it actually corroborates a lot of what Millie Weaver put out there in her documentary, Shadowgate.
Right. We don't have to watch the whole thing, but I do want to watch at least a good portion of it.
Yeah, I think I got it fast forwarded up to 39 minutes in, 30 minutes in. I'll do a little stick with me as I do a little hopping around to find a nice start point. Sure. But he's going to talk about an event that happened a couple days ago that I'd like you to take special note of the location that he speaks of in this segment of the interview, because that location you should write down and take with you when you go to watch Shadowgate, which I'm sure you will after you hear this. It's interesting and it is developing. And as we like to say in the community that on the chat room around this, we say we let the sauce kind of simmer. We never like jump on anything. We let things take 8 to 24 hours. Well, this was November 28th. So everything
we're out of the sauce period.
We're out of that. Yeah, it hasn't been. I have not seen anyone say anything about it negatively, but then again, they're not saying a lot of anything anyway in the media. So let me start this up and see where we're at.
In Michigan, 100,000 or 90,000 Arizona. Now this is notional. A different one in Nevada and Georgia, in Pennsylvania. But the important point was they were exactly at the same percentage. This is a mathematical impossibility that this could have happened. And it means an algorithm was used. And this algorithm was designed to stay within the bounds. And when the assembled numbers were put together, it wouldn't be obvious that these numbers of votes were inserted. And so this is a huge flashing red light. And it's important that people understand with this kind of data that we're seeing. Some more numbers that are interesting. Sydney pointed out in Georgia that there are 96,000 absentee votes that were disregarded in Fulton County. They had a water leak. Pennsylvania. The state of Pennsylvania mailed out 1.8 million votes to their citizens. The state did. These are not absentee ballots. These were these ballots that have no chain of custody. Lo and behold, 2.5 million came back. And someone had to have a printing press, and we're cranking them out. That is just the pure sniff test that doesn't require a genius to understand. If you mail out 1.5 and 1.8 and get 2.5 million back, something is wrong. Now, Sydney and the president, through I believe General Flynn, have got the Kraken organization, the 305 Military Intelligence Battalion, working with them. Because,
by the way, when he says the 305 Military Intelligence Organization working with, that's the first time those two have been married together. When they talk about those two. So it gets interesting from here. I'm going to let it play a little longer. I just wanted to point out we've heard this term, and there's been a lot of speculation, and now I think we've actually married it to an actual organizational unit. So interesting. I'm going to let it go for a little more.
Because in all of this, we have not seen any footprints of the DOJ, of the FBI, nor the CIA on the friendly side.
Wait a minute.
It's been on the deep state side.
Let me just stop you there, General, because you just said something very interesting. You just said that who has just opened up the Kraken, and then you just described what the Kraken was. We all know the term because of
saying what I just said.
using it, but you just said what it is. Can you back up on that?
Yes. Sydney got the term Kraken because that's the nickname of the 305th Military Intelligence Battalion. And that has been her source, along with other sources that Mary and I know about, but we don't want to talk about. And so we're getting the different sources that are relaying this. But the important thing is they identified, now get this, they identified China, Iran, and Russia as being involved in this and manipulating the votes. In addition, the U.S. Army, the U.S. Special Forces Command seized a server farm in Frankfurt, Germany, because they were sending this data from those 5 states or 6 states through the internet to Spain and then into Frankfurt, Germany. Special Operation Forces seized that facility. So they have those servers. And they know all this data they are provided.
Did that go down without incident, by the way? Did that seizure go down without incident?
Well, I've heard it didn't go down without incident. I haven't been able to verify it. I want to be careful in that. It's just coming out. But I understand my initial report is that there were U.S. soldiers killed in that operation. Now, that was a CIA operation. And so that's the very worrisome thing. Did that occur because of what Mary and I and Alan were notifying on the Sunday and the Monday in different networks that this was going to happen, that they were using hammer and scorecard, and so they decided to bounce it overseas. So the server farms that hammer and scorecard were using in the continental United States couldn't be used. I don't know that. In any case, it makes it more vulnerable because when you start moving that kind of data overseas, other people look at them.
But you are saying
And,
that was a CIA facility, and that was where the server was taken from by these special forces, was a CIA facility in Germany.
That's correct. Frankfurt, Germany. Now, we have all this information.
There's Frankfurt being mentioned.
General Flynn, of course, people must realize, was the senior military intelligence officer in the U.S. commands as the Defense Intelligence Agency. He's a career intelligence officer, knows this stuff backwards and forwards. And from my experience in the cloud business, this was a trivial operation, relatively speaking. But the magnitude, because so many people, Brandon, were involved, so many people, like General Flynn mentioned, the Democrat person saw this, are coming forward. But what we are doing, we are competing with the Constitution and the 14 December date for the Electoral College. And why? Because we have this information, and we know that not only did we have the deep state in the executive that President Trump had to fight, we also had it in the legislature, where you have Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Schumer, all of those people were involved in this. They were involved in the Russian hoax. They were involved in this coup d'etat.
We're naming
But we
names.
also had Judge Sullivan, who was General Flynn's judge, outed himself on this. And so you have the compromise there, and that's why the 305th, the Krakens, were targeted and selected, I believe, because the president could trust them. That's why Chris Miller, who is now the acting Secretary of Defense and a former Special Operations hero, that's why Chris Miller is the Secretary of Defense.
What about his speech that's gone viral of him directing all special operations forces to answer directly to him?
Well, that tells you something, doesn't it?
Yes, it
It
does.
tells you that we had that tightened up because there are people that are part of this conspiracy. This is treason, what we're talking about. Some people may just think, oh, it's just politics. Yeah.
So that could go on for a while. I didn't want to eat up half an hour just listening to him go, but it's
No,
there.
that's fine.
I can send you the link. We can put it in the chat.
Yeah, please do. And for anyone interested in knowing what's all going down with that, Christian as well he's gonna put it in the chat so that people can look it up for themselves, do your own research. I always encourage that. I always, and I wouldn't play anything that I knew wasn't fact. And because it was decorated officers talking and speaking and, gave vital information, I think that's important. And, I know we kind of switched from Ron Paul to this, but I think it does tie together in a way because it talks about
we're
all of
defending
the corruption and the violations against constitutions and exactly, everything that Ron Paul stood for. And, through Rand Paul stands for, it's vital. It's key.
Yep. I think in general we're looking at we're at a precipice that I know that half of our country, based on our voting record alone, isn't aware of what's at stake. And honestly, I think it's not even that they're not aware of what's at stake. They're more aware of a fiction that they have been sold for I don't know how many years it takes to completely believe that socialism is superior. I don't know how much brainwashing that requires. But these people actually are voting for an antithesis of what our country actually stands for. They're voting for changing and eliminating the freedoms that we currently hold for a new version, a new vision of America. So it's worse than not knowing. It's actually fighting for an opposite idea without without a conflicting point of view. You know, I mean, I
Right.
really feel like, and you know, there are some heady Marxists who, you know, can have a debate. Um, I don't know. I would love to probably watch those, but they're rarely civil, and
Right.
that's part of the problem. So, but you know, really, what we're dealing with here, I don't know if it's necessarily like directly related to, you know, Marxist communist ideas. I think we're really just working on people who want to see themselves put into power and are willing to do that and be part of this world organization that is trying desperately to set itself up above the sovereign country of the United States. And they're willing to sell us all short. They're willing to sell 70 million of us short for as a legitimate statistic. And I hope that the 70 million that are awake can learn not to just be divisive, but learn how to educate and have civil discourse and educate the next generation away from that which would erode our freedoms. So, I mean, that war isn't one that's fought with guns and fists. I mean, we might be at that time where, you know, people had to draw weapons in Frankfurt, Germany right now. And that's very unfortunate because really those were contractors that were probably Americans as well. I don't know. I have no idea.
Right.
Um,
You know,
it was
so
us
we have
fighting us.
right. We have a very good comment I'd like to post. Ashley Ramos, a friend of mine who does Back to Blue rallies, she said they're voting for the same dream a used car salesman sells. I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and when I think about where we're headed, you know, I have a grandson, I have kids that are just becoming adults and they're learning the hard way and without education and without that openness to understand. You know, I feel like we're lost. And
Remember when you were asking me like what would a Ron Paul candidate do in today?
right,
I almost want to flip that question and ask what would a 1980s 1970s media do with the news of today? You know, the one that the news that's being suppressed and hidden from the populace today that we're having blackouts on. This type of I mean, we freaked out when we had some terrorist hijack a plane in Afghanistan, or you know what I mean? Like, then they keep it on the tarp. What was that story? I can't even recall it off the top of my head. I was just a kid when it happened, but you know, the whole country was freaked out about that. And here, the entire country is being held hostage. You know, and you know, the media is complicit. They're part of it. They're part. They've got their finger on the trigger in the hostage situation.
right.
And so, you know, it kills me that what 40 years is all it takes to flip. And all I'm talking about is, you know, can we preserve it in the next 10? So I think we have to kind of gain perspective. We have to play the long game. We have to become the Rand Paul Republicans and play the long game. You know, because I think the Ron Paul Republican, there's a time for that. And I think that might be right now. The no compromise, no bullshit. Sorry for any of the sensitive ears out there. But yeah, you know, now's the time to, you know, grip tight to the Constitution, understand it. And, but there's also a long game of changing hearts and minds and education. And we can't give up. I think we got relaxed. I think I don't know specifically. I think, like I said, there's resources. Hopefully we'll put some links on this as well about Charlotte Iserby's book. I can find PDFs or I can find places for people to find this stuff. Absolutely. But it's important that we really start paying attention. We really look for our own news. We really vet the information and recognize that the media is not they're not on our side right now. So
well, and
that's
you talk
going to
about
get me in trouble with a lot of my friends.
Well, and you talk about,
Because
you viewed the, we're talking about the Republican Party, and part of the problem, we've talked about this before, and even I've agreed, the Republican Party is sleeping. They're making themselves become the silent majority, in my opinion, because they're not standing up and defending the Constitution. And, my friend Donnie, he has a great comment. The problem is that the Republican Party has completely gone off the rails. They are no longer, in general, a party of limited government that defends the Constitution. And I think, with that being said, being listed as a Republican, I tend to agree with that, because
I completely
I
agree,
think,
Donnie. We, working with Will County Republicans this year, which is how I met Allison. We saw a silent GOP in Illinois. There was no help. Everybody was fend for themselves, and when we talked about, like, where are the libertarians? Where are my daughter? Did I mention that in this one, or did I do it on the past one? I can't remember, Allison.
I think it was the last one. You can go ahead and mention it
The
again.
last one. So my daughter's asking me, I don't know if I'm a Republican or if I'm a libertarian, or no, actually she says, I don't know if I'm a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. And I went, well, and she goes, well, I know what a libertarian is, and I think that's what I am, but is that like further right than Republican? And I went, I think that's actually the case now. I think Republicans have become
Right.
like the centrists. They've become the middle, and they're soft, and they're not, they're willing to do. Yeah, the Republican Party of today is not the Republican Party of Ronald Reagan. I mean, Ronald Reagan was a libertarian. These were men that understood the value of what we had. And what's funny is, that Reagan was a convert. He was a walkaway. He actually became passionate about our country and its founding principles and the Constitution in the process of running for office, and after his governorship. So I'm kind of like, that's what we need. We need to convert. We need people to become passionate about wanting to preserve liberties for their generation and for the generation beyond them. This is unavoidable. I got 5 kids. Lord Terry's, like I said last time, I want them to have some of the same privileges I had.
Right.
So.
And so I'm going to add this in the chat real quick for those who want it. Let's see if we can do this. Okay, perfect. I think I did it. Yes, I did. Okay, so I'd kind of like to get your response to this, Christian. So Ashley said, take away the lobbyist ability to fund as a body and remove super PACs and watch the tunes change. Everyone has an agenda when money and power is on the line.
Well, yes and no. I know that we wouldn't have gotten as far as we did in 2012 without a super PAC, but I know that I think it's even easier than that. I think it's more about term limits. Money. The reason people stay in office and want to become career politicians is because there aren't enough term limits. Right. Because they become career politicians. I think we need to go further than term limits. I think we need to be able to say, hey, look, you served, great, you're done. Go back. The founders' idea was, hey, you run a farm, you run your whatever business you run, you want to be a carpenter or something, and then we want you to tell us how to run this country for X amount of time, and then go back to be a carpenter. We want them to go back. But what we have is, well, now how much do I make, and what's my book deals, and what's my speaking engagements? Money corrupts, absolutely, and really, taking away the lobbyists would only take away one source of their funding. I think we need to eliminate the career politicians. So, I agree with a caveat, but at the same time, it unfortunately takes money to run campaigns. Allison and I have a unique relationship in that we would do much more if she had a PAC behind her, because I've got my 5 kids to feed. I've got, I would be somebody who would be providing services for her. And I would be encouraging you to donate to her PAC or whatever would be fun, or her campaign, in order so that she could have the money to employ someone with my skill set to continue to do things that would benefit getting that message out. So money is not necessarily an evil. It's a necessity. But when it's the focus, it is, it's when the money is, it's not about the money that you need to run the campaigns and to get your message out. It's more about the money that you have after the campaigns, after you've had served your 8 terms, your life sentence, whatever it is that you're going to do in the Senate. That's where corruption happens, when the men that make the laws live above the law. And that only happens with career politicians.
Well said.
I know. I do stuff like that.
I've quoted you several times, and I'm going to have to do it again.
Okay. I'm going to write that down. Is anyone recording this? Okay. Good.
So, and I'm going to bring this up, and I didn't tell you I would, so it's kind of a surprise.
Oh, no, you're going to surprise me again.
I'm full of them. I want to talk a little bit about what your daughter's song means.
Oh, no.
And how it affects the general population with what led her to write that. Because she wrote it, correct?
Okay, so yeah. My daughter is a
And she's
songwriter.
amazing, by the way.
She's wonderful. As a matter of fact, we do a live stream every Wednesday where she gets to kind of showcase what she's doing, and it gives me the opportunity to practice. I don't know if you notice the talk show style curtains and whatnot is actually because we are trying to build a in-house home studio, video production studio here, not just for her, but for other people like Allison who wants to do video. We have a lot of people that I've been doing video for a long time, that now I'm doing it for myself and for those that I care about. So, but on Wednesdays, I've been practicing. I've been honing this little setup on her music. And, she's written a lot of songs. She's kind of I know I've been a visual artist my entire life. And, when you have your kids, you're like, oh, they're going to be artists like me. And my daughter was an artist, nothing like me. She took 100% of my talent and put it 200% into music. And It's a passion. And at 17, she's written damn near 100 songs, if not more. And only recently, since she's had an Instagram account and has had the curtains pulled back a little and her eyes open to what's happening in the rest of the world outside of her homeschooling community and her, we've kept her in a perfect shell because we're evil. But in general, she sees the world through the lens of, our groups and us. And now she's determining things for herself. And as she should, she's about to become an adult. And she has written songs to that effect and wrote a song that Allison got to be like the second person to hear on a random messenger call one night. And she's like, I want that song. And you're going to play it on a float like you're Ferris Bueller. And we're going to have people all around you. I think that's what your mindset was.
It was. And it still is.
It was going to be that float in downtown Chicago with a leopard print vest. But no, she's written an anthem that is highly politically charged. That I think it's strange as a parent because it puts you in a strange position where you spent your whole life protecting your children,
right?
And she's my oldest, and she wants to say something that would be controversial. She wants to make a statement with her music, and everything that she's done has been very apolitical. It's been very, butterflies and rainbows and, beautiful, wonderful little lullabies and ditties and, some heartfelt stuff here and there. But then like she was deeply affected by what has happened with the riots, what has happened with the lockdowns, what has happened with the media. And she can't help but express herself through music. So she wrote a song that we will be dumping on the world. I don't know if we're going to do that here. We've talked about doing it on some other people's shows, but I feel like you're making a bid. I get the impression.
How
So
about just a clip of it? Because I know you have it.
I don't know if I have it. Well, it's called "I Stand." Well, no, is it? What is it? We haven't really nailed down the lyrics. Trying to decide if we do this here.
Yes, we do.
I have to yell at her and have her come down and just play it, but that would be putting her on the spot for sure.
Yeah.
But it's definitely in support of our first responders.
Absolutely.
And
That's why I asked if you could just play a clip, because I think it's important.
I have, let's see, I don't know if I can pull it up here. I don't have my keyboard here. I'd have to stand up and you'd have to go. I think it would mess with your continuity. But needless to say, we feel that the times are pushing us to release this.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and I don't expect this to get easier in the next week. As a matter of fact, I told Allison I believed, what we were talking about is in the content of that video is just the first. I think this whole week is just going to be an onslaught of surprises we're going to be dropping. Because it has to. I mean, we're out of time. This is when if anything has to be revealed and shown up, this is when it needs to happen, and there will be fallout from it. It's. I don't want there to be. I don't think anybody who loves.
I think it'll actually bring people together. So that's why I think
it will. It'll also, I think, also draw a target for the first time, and that worries.
Sure.
Well,
as a father, that's expected. So I would really love and request that you look for that clip, and we can play it in just a minute.
All right.
And with that said, and then even more reason to play that clip, Donnie Henry says, as Ron Paul says, it's the young people who will lead this libertarian revolution and restore our Constitution. And I think that song is pivotal to what he just said.
It will be released. It's not the Kraken, but it will be released.
Well, that's why I asked for just a smidget of it. I don't want the whole thing played right now. I mean, I would love it. That would make my world. That would make my Christmas.
Let me see if I can. Hey, Charlotte.
Okay, we're going to give him a minute, guys, to get his daughter. She is amazing, to say the least. And Ashley, if you're still on, you're going to love this. This young lady is phenomenal. She will bring you to tears and touch your heart. We'll just give them just a second to grab her and to be able to do this for you guys. I think it's vital. I think it needs to be heard. And sorry to put you on the spot about that, but I actually was planning to do that this whole time. So this is Charlie. And she doesn't look too happy. But she is amazing. And the sound's not working, so we're gonna.
Sorry. You're gonna kneel?
Yes.
Okay, there she is. She sees where she's at.
So then let me ask the master herself. There are people that are watching this that are very patriotic and very forthcoming about liberties and Constitution. And I think your song that you wrote needs to be heard. And I think this audience needs to hear it. So would you be so kind to give me the greatest present ever for Christmas?
Oh, listen to this. This is like...
Oh, you're buttering me up, aren't you?
And please enlighten us with your genius.
I wanted to get permission.
Lyrics.
I know we're going to release it eventually.
At some point.
Do we play like a bit off of the recording that we did? Would you rather just play a little bit?
There's no music that's worthwhile. Like I had the ukulele, but it just ruined it.
What do you mean?
Completely. Playing the ukulele with it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
What?
You heard it with the ukulele, right?
When it was live, yes. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, but I played it with the ukulele, and I think it ruined it and ruined the grandness.
No, I don't think it was bad.
did. I think you should play it.
Yeah, that was.
I tell you what, we'll get the comments rolling. If I get one person that says they want to hear it, Ashley, would you like to hear this amazing
That's easy. That's easy.
song?
It's like you're over there and like your husband's in the corner, like, did it, honey? You proud?
So please play it for us.
Play it for it or just sing it?
Just play it,
chorus,
or do you want to sing it?
If you want to sing it, that'd be great.
Well, I might.
I didn't want to do it without your permission or without you
The
knowing we were doing it.
ukulele, I do not like. I'm not sure I like it with the ukulele. For some reason,
Okay,
I feel like.
would you rather just play it?
Do you want me to sing the whole thing or just the chorus?
The whole thing.
The whole thing?
Nah, we can do the whole thing.
The whole thing?
We got to save something for the release. Here,
So
hold on.
just- How about just the chorus? Will that make
Okay.
sense?
The chorus would be perfect.
So here,
See, you got the colorful flag. Good job.
look at this. Yeah, so here
Good
is.
job.
We do have it privately on BandLab. That's where we do a lot of our mixing.
Do you want
But here's the lyrics. But we'll go ahead and give a sample.
Is that
We'll
good?
we'll release a sample right now, and then what we'll do, Charlie, is I'll give you your own
We'll
episode.
stop it right here.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So
like
we will give
everybody.
we will do a sample, and then I will give Charlie her own episode to play the whole thing.
I stand with the blue, the red, the green, the yellow too. They risk their lives for me and you, and this is how you repay them. You curse those who have fallen for our liberties and so much more. You burn the flag that they died for. You ridicule and hate them. Oh, you should be ashamed, as I am for you.
I have a space there.
Oh, God, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Buildings falling down, 1, 2 hit the ground. They were the ones who ran towards the storm. We just ran away, cried from our TVs. You think they're our enemies. Buildings falling down, 1, 2 hit the ground. They were the ones who ran towards the storm. We just ran away, cried to our TVs. They're heroes. I stand with the blue, the red, the green, the yellow too. They risk their lives for me and you, and this is how you repay them. You curse those who have fallen for our liberties and so much more. You burn the flag that they died for. You ridicule and hate them. Oh, you should be ashamed, as I am for you. Oh, God, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
So that was recorded the night she came up with the song.
So it's not great.
It's changed greatly since then.
So, Charlie, here you go. Powerful by Donnie Henry.
So
Wow. And this is why I wanted it played. It ties in with everything we're talking about. It wasn't just, hey, Charlie, play your song. It was, Ron Paul would be proud of that song.
we hope.
Ronald Reagan would be proud of that song. The founding fathers would be proud of that song.
Yeah, we expect to play it if we can find someone to do like a drum and fife layer for us. So we're working on
We're
that.
still working on the musical aspects of it. It just
Yeah.
has to be chords.
She's got choruses and
Absolutely. Well, that was very enlightening. Thank you, Charlie, very much. I know I put you on the spot, honey, and I'm very sorry, but I'm kind of not sorry because you're that amazing.
I was start cleaning the floor. If my hair would like go crazy, I'm like, this is great. It's not like my dad's ever done this before.
You know, and that's the power of it. That's the power of just jumping in and just doing it, just going for it.
Yeah.
So I think that that's important. And I think that you'll touch a lot of people with that song. And I would love to give you your own episode with the entire song with you playing it. That would be amazing.
So you are doing a live stream on Wednesdays.
Mm-hmm.
It's on YouTube. Look up Charlotte Rio RIO Sass music. I think is what you have
No,
to
it's
look.
just Charlotte Rio
It's
Sass.
Charlotte Rio Sass on YouTube.
It was originally Charlotte Sass music, but we put in the Rio. We made Charlotte Rio Sass.
So yeah, if you want to check us out, I think we go at 8 p.m. Central Time every Wednesday in this one little space right here. So you get enough people that request it there, maybe we'll release it there too. Who knows? You have what? I have liberal friends.
And I know from personal experience that if you tell them my opinions, they don't like me anymore.
That's a problem. That's part of this. We don't know how to have proper discourse.
No, but they're free to tell me their opinions. So that's the first time I've heard it with the voices, the doubling.
Is it?
It's the first time I've heard it.
Okay.
I didn't know that was not expecting that.
Yeah. So what was it? Did you hear what she said earlier, Allison?
What?
About her friends?
About her what?
This is the biggest piece of this. The thing about her friends is that the concern is she puts a song like this out and you get unfriended, you get banned, you get.
I'm not all that concerned about it.
Yeah,
it's gonna happen. I just like.
I was gonna say, it is like school, and it's like high school, and you have to be. I think you're strong enough, Charlie, to. I think you were raised by very wonderful parents, and your mom is amazing, and your dad's pretty awesome. But I think that they've raised you to a point to where you are okay with not everybody liking it because the right people will like it. Well, and I think that's important.
She's like she sees the one-sidedness of it. Well, I like you regardless of what you think. And I'm willing to, but that's not a reciprocated thing.
The thing is I'm homeschooled and Christian, and so as a result, most of the world already hates you. And so, like, the moment you're like, "Oh, I'm homeschooled," they're like, "Oh, you evil human! How dare you?"
I don't think that's how they.
Well, no, but you have some neighbors who are not very nice. But as a result, like, the homeschool community has like just kind of gotten used to not being liked, and it's not that I'm not afraid of not being liked. I'm always not liked by someone. It happens.
Yeah, I'm used to that at this point.
Yeah. The only thing I'm worried about is I have people that I want to minister to, and I know that if they hear these types of beliefs, it immediately shuts them down, and they don't hear anything else I have to say. So it has to really go with, is it worth it based on who it is with? Like, I have some friends that I'm like, well, I wish we were friends, but I guess we can't be. And then I have some friends where I'm like, I don't want to risk that because I still want to talk to them about other things. And I know that my opinions politically will just immediately shut them down, and I won't have any hope of even talking to them about anything else.
Yeah, as you can tell, she's a raging liberal.
That's okay.
Not really.
I happen to like you just the way you are, and I think you're perfect.
I like me too.
And I think we need more Charlies in the world.
Well, there can only be
don't
one.
think
There
you
can
can
be
find one.
only one. She beheaded the last one.
Well, guys, we have reached over our hour, which is awesome because I think, I think that.
Put Don's comment up there, and we'll close with that. What's
yeah, I will. I like that comment. So, like I said, we've reached over the hour. So you have been watching Citizen Watch, where your voice matters. And we want to welcome our guests, Christian and Charlie Sass. So, and thank you so much for your rendition of your song. And we will end with a quote from Ron Paul that was just put up. Speak out and speak often, and don't worry about those that at this point can't understand. They can't unhear what we tell them. And I think that's pretty powerful. I think that's important. And I think everybody needs to hear that. I think Ron Paul has become an icon and a blessing to the political world if people would just open their eyes and mostly their ears. Someone, a really good friend of mine, had said, you know, the most important part of your body is your ears. And I think that that's vital. So with that being said, everybody have a wonderful Monday night. God bless and have a great rest of the week. And remember to be kind and
Think critically.
Think critically and have a great conversation. Start a piece. You guys have a great night and God bless.
Thanks, Allison.